I always thought marriage was like a sitcom until I realized I was the punchline. My name is Nick Rourke, and at 39, I've learned that life has a twisted sense of humor. 10 years as a cop taught me to read people, and 5 years as a security consultant taught me that everyone's hiding something. What I never learned was how to read my own wife. Allison sat across from me at our kitchen table, scrolling through her phone with the intensity of a surgeon performing brain surgery. Her blonde hair caught the morning light streaming through our bay window, and for a moment she looked like the woman I'd married 8 years ago. Then she laughed at something on her screen, and the spell broke. "What's so funny?" I asked, sipping my coffee. "Just work stuff," she said without looking up. "You wouldn't understand." That phrase had become her favorite lately. Marketing executives, apparently, lived in a world too complex for ex-cops to comprehend. I'd stopped trying to understand when she started coming home at midnight 3 times a week, claiming client dinners and strategy sessions. The kitchen felt too big around us. We'd bought this house in Riverside Heights 5 years ago, back when Allison's marketing firm was booming and my security business was taking off. Now it felt like a museum of better times, with our wedding photos staring down at us like disappointed relatives. "I'll be late tonight," Allison said, finally looking up. Her green eyes held that distant look I'd grown to hate. "Derek's got this new client presentation and we need to—" "Derek again?" I interrupted. Derek Lane, her boss. 40 years old, divorced, and driving a Tesla that cost more than most people's houses. I'd met him exactly once, at the company Christmas party, where he'd spent the entire evening talking about his yacht while his hand lingered too long on the small of my wife's back. "He's my boss, Nick. This is important. More important than dinner with your husband?" She sighed, the kind of exaggerated sound that suggested I was being unreasonable. "You know what? Yes, some of us have careers that require actual effort." The dig hit its mark. My security consulting business had been struggling lately. 3 clients had dropped me in the past month, claiming budget cuts. Meanwhile, Allison's salary had doubled in 2 years. "Fine," I said. "I'll eat alone. Again." She was already back to her phone. "There's leftover Chinese in the fridge." After she left, I sat in the silence of our too-big house and wondered when we'd stopped being a team. The answer came to me as I stared at her coffee cup, still warm and stained with her burgundy lipstick, sometime around the time Derek Lane entered the picture. My phone buzzed. Joel Martinez, my best friend since the police academy and the only person who still called me regularly. "Beer tonight?" his text read. "You sound like you need it." I hadn't talked to him in 3 days, but Joel always knew. That's what 15 years of friendship gets you, a human early warning system. "Allison's working late again," I typed back. "Derek?" "Derek. I'll bring the good stuff." Joel showed up at 7 with a 6-pack of craft beer and the kind of grin that meant trouble. At 41, he looked exactly like what he was, a construction foreman who'd never met a problem he couldn't solve with either humor or brute force. "So," he said, settling into my leather recliner like he owned it, "how long are we pretending you don't know what's going on?" "I don't know what you're talking about." "Right. And I don't know that Derek Lane's been bragging at Murphy's bar about his new conquest. Blonde marketing executive married, loves expensive restaurants." The beer suddenly tasted like ash. "You heard this personally?" "My cousin Tony tends bar there on weekends. Says your boy Derek's been real chatty lately, especially about some woman named Allison who does this thing with her tongue." "Stop." I set my beer down harder than necessary. "Just stop." Joel's expression softened. "Nick, man, I'm sorry, but you needed to know." I stared at our wedding photo on the mantel. Allison in white, radiant and laughing, me in my rented tux, looking like I'd won the lottery. 8 years ago, I thought I had. What am I supposed to do with this information? Get proof. Then get a lawyer. Then get revenge. I'm not going to... Not that kind of revenge, you moron. Legal revenge. The kind that leaves them broke and embarrassed and wishing they'd never been born. I spent the next hour listening to Joel's increasingly creative suggestions for ruining Derek's life, most of which would have landed us both in prison. But as the beer flowed and the anger built, one thing became clear. I wasn't going to sit in this house and pretend everything was fine while my wife screwed her boss. I need proof first, I said finally. Now you're talking. What's the plan? The plan, as it turned out, was simpler than I'd expected. Allison had always been careless with her things, and I'd always been good at finding what people tried to hide. It took me exactly 20 minutes to find the evidence I needed. Her purse sat on the kitchen counter, expensive leather and designer clasps. Inside, beneath her wallet and makeup, I found a cocktail napkin from Romano's Steakhouse, written in blue ink, in handwriting that definitely wasn't hers. Friday can't come soon enough. You're incredible, A.D. The napkin was stained with her burgundy lipstick. I photographed it with my phone, then put everything back exactly as I'd found it. My hands were steady, my breathing calm. 10 years of police work had taught me to compartmentalize, to think clearly under pressure. But inside, something was breaking apart. When Allison came home at 12:30 a.m., I was waiting in the living room with a glass of whiskey and the photograph on my phone. "How was work?" I asked. She kicked off her heels and rubbed her feet. "Exhausting. Derek's so demanding. We barely got through half the presentation before he decided to start over." "Sounds frustrating." "You have no idea." She moved toward the stairs. "I'm going to shower and go to bed." "Allison." Something in my voice made her turn. For a second, I saw fear flicker across her face. "I found something today," I said, holding up my phone. "Want to explain this?" She looked at the photograph of the napkin, and I watched her face cycle through surprise, calculation, and finally, defiance. "You went through my purse? That's what you're upset about? Not the love note from your boss?" "It's not what you think." "Then what is it?" She sat down on the couch, suddenly looking tired. "Derek's going through a difficult divorce. He's been leaning on me for support. That note, it was just him being grateful for my friendship." The lie was so smooth, so practiced, that I almost admired it. Almost. "Friendship," I repeated. "Yes." "The kind of friendship that requires lipstick stains?" Her jaw tightened. "You're being paranoid, Nick. This is exactly why I don't tell you about work anymore. You turn everything into some conspiracy theory." "Am I? Paranoid?" "Yes, and it's getting old." She stood up and headed for the stairs again. At the bottom step, she turned back. "Maybe you should talk to someone about this jealousy problem. It's not healthy." I sat alone in the dark for a long time after that, turning the napkin over in my hands. If I was paranoid, if I was crazy, then at least I'd know. But if I was right. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I was looking for. Harper Lane, Derek's wife, Allison's younger sister. I'd always liked Harper. She was different from Allison, fiercer, more direct. She'd been a bridesmaid at our wedding, and I remembered thinking Derek was lucky to have her. Now I wondered if she knew what kind of man she'd married. My finger hovered over her number. Once I made this call, there would be no going back. Our lives would explode, messily and publicly. But sitting in my empty house, listening to my wife shower off another man's touch, I realized they'd already exploded. I just hadn't been invited to the blast. I was about to dial when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You're not the only one being played. 11 p.m. tomorrow. Your house. Don't be late." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The next day crawled by like a funeral procession. Allison left early for another client breakfast with Derek, kissing my cheek with lips that felt like ice. I spent the morning doing paperwork for my struggling business, and the afternoon wondering who had sent me that text. At 6 p.m., Allison called to say she'd be late again. Another client dinner, another night of Derek's demanding schedule. I almost laughed at the euphemism. "Don't wait up," she said, and hung up before I could respond. Joel came by around 8 with pizza and moral support. "You look like hell," he said, studying my face. "Did you sleep at all?" "Someone's coming here tonight at 11. Someone who knows about Allison and Derek." "Who?" "I don't know. Anonymous text." Joel frowned. "That sounds like a trap, man. What if Derek's setting you up for something?" "Then I guess I'll find out at 11. We ate pizza and watched a basketball game, but my mind was elsewhere. Who else knew about the affair? Who cared enough to reach out to me? And why the dramatic midnight meeting? At 10:45, Joel left, making me promise to call if things went sideways. I changed into jeans and a t-shirt, then sat in my living room and waited. At exactly 11 p.m., the doorbell rang. I opened the door and forgot how to breathe. Harper Lane stood on my doorstep, and she was stunning in a way that made my chest tight. She wore a black dress that hugged every curve, her dark hair falling in waves over her shoulders. But it was her eyes that stopped me cold, green like Allison's, but fierce where my wife's were calculating. "Hello, Nick," she said. "We need to talk." "Harper, what are you doing here?" She held up her phone, showing me a photo that made my blood freeze. Allison and Derek at Romano's Steakhouse, holding hands across a candlelit table. The timestamp showed tonight, 9:47 p.m. "Your wife is on a date with my husband right now," Harper said. "The question is, are you going to go interrupt them, or are you going to invite me in for that drink?" I stepped aside, and she walked into my house like she owned it. She'd been here before, of course, family dinners, holidays, birthday parties, but never like this. Never with her marriage imploding and mine right behind it. "How long have you known?" I asked, closing the door. 3 weeks. I hired a private investigator when Derek started working late every night. Imagine my surprise when I found out his new project was my sister. She moved to the kitchen and opened my liquor cabinet like she'd done it 100 times before. "Wine or whiskey?" "Whiskey. Definitely whiskey." She poured 2 glasses of Jameson and handed me one. Her fingers brushed mine, and I felt something electric pass between us. "So," she said, raising her glass, "here's to being married to lying pieces of garbage." We drank, and the whiskey burned away some of the numbness I'd been carrying around. "Why come to me?" I asked. "Why not just confront them yourself?" "Because I'm done being the victim in this story. Derek thinks he's so clever sneaking around behind my back. Allison thinks she's got the perfect life, successful career, devoted husband, rich lover on the side. They're both about to learn what happens when you underestimate the people you've betrayed." She moved closer, and I caught her scent, something floral and dangerous. "Besides," she said, "I've always thought you were too good for my sister." "Harper." "What?" "It's true. Allison's always been selfish. Even as kids, she took whatever she wanted and never cared who got hurt. I used to think marriage might change her, but people don't really change, do they?" I thought about the woman I'd married versus the stranger who'd been living in my house for the past year. No, I guess they don't. Harper's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and smiled, a predator's smile that made my pulse quicken. "Derek's texting me. Says he's stuck at the office with a difficult client, poor baby, working so hard." She showed me the message, then typed back, "Don't worry, honey. I'm keeping myself entertained." "What are you doing?" "Evening the score." She hit send, then looked at me with those fierce green eyes. "The way I see it, we have 2 choices. We can sit here feeling sorry for ourselves while they're out there laughing at us, or we can show them exactly what they've thrown away." The whiskey and her proximity were making it hard to think clearly. "Harper, we can't..." Can't what? Can't take back some control? Can't remind ourselves what it feels like to be wanted? She set down her glass and moved even closer. Can't do exactly what they're doing right now? Her hand touched my chest, and I felt my resolve crumble. When was the last time someone had looked at me like I mattered? When was the last time I'd felt desired instead of tolerated? They made their choice, Harper whispered. Now we make ours. I should have stopped her, should have been the bigger person, the moral one. Instead, I kissed her, and she tasted like whiskey and revenge and everything I'd been missing. We made love in the bed I shared with Allison, and it felt like reclaiming territory that had been stolen from me. Harper was everything my wife wasn't: passionate, present, hungry for connection. When she cried out my name, it sounded like a prayer and a battle cry all at once. Afterward, we lay tangled in sheets that would never feel the same, and Harper traced patterns on my chest with her fingertip. No regrets? She asked. None. You? Only that we waited this long. At 2 a.m., her phone rang. Derek, probably wondering where she was. She declined the call and turned the phone off. He can wait, she said. Let him worry for once. We made breakfast together as the sun came up, Harper wearing one of my old Police Academy t-shirts and nothing else. She looked more at home in my kitchen than Allison had in months. So what's the plan? She asked, scrambling eggs while I made coffee. Plan? For destroying them. Because we're not done, are we? This was just the opening move. I thought about it. The old Nick, the by-the-book cop, would have filed for divorce quietly and tried to move on with dignity. But that Nick had been played for a fool by his own wife. This Nick wanted blood. What did you have in mind? Harper grinned, and I saw something wild and beautiful in her expression. I want them to lose everything, their jobs, their friends, their reputations. I want them to understand exactly what they've destroyed. That's a tall order. Good thing I married a man with connections, and you used to be a cop. Between the two of us, we know where all the bodies are buried. She was right. Derek's business depended on his reputation for discretion and family values. Half his clients were conservative investors who'd drop him in a heartbeat if they knew he was cheating on his wife with her sister. And Allison's marketing firm was built on trust and relationships, things that tended to evaporate when word got out about affairs. It would have to be surgical, I said. Clean and legal, no criminal activity. Of course, we're not criminals. We're just people who've been pushed too far. The front door opened and we both froze. Allison's voice carried from the entryway. Nick, I forgot my laptop charger. I need to... She appeared in the kitchen doorway and stopped dead. Her eyes took in Harper in my t-shirt, the 2 coffee cups, the unmistakable intimacy of the scene. What the hell is going on here? Harper turned slowly, a piece of toast in her hand and a smile on her lips. Good morning, sister. Funny running into you here. Allison's face went white, then red, then white again. Harper? What are you doing here? Why are you wearing... Oh my God. We had our own date night, I said calmly. Hope you don't mind that we used the good sheets. You slept with my sister? Your sister's husband was busy, Harper said. Lucky for me, so was your husband. The accusation hit Allison like a physical blow. She stumbled backward, gripping the doorframe for support. I don't know what you think you know, but... Romano's Steakhouse, Harper said. Table 7. You had the salmon, Derek had the steak. You held hands during dessert, and he kissed you in the parking lot at 11:23 p.m. Should I go on? Allison's mouth opened and closed, like a fish gasping for air. It's not what you think. Really? I pulled out my phone and showed her the photographs Harper had shared with me. Because it looks exactly like what I think. You've been spying on me? We've been protecting ourselves, Harper said. Something you might have considered before you decided to destroy 2 marriages for a few cheap thrills. Allison looked between us, her perfect composure finally cracking. This is insane. You can't do this. Do what? Harper asked innocently. Sleep with our own spouses? Oh wait, that's what you've been doing. It's different. How? Allison couldn't answer that, because there was no answer. She'd been caught, exposed, and outmaneuvered all at once. Get out, she said finally. Both of you. This is my house. Actually, I said, it's our house. And Harper's my guest. If anyone's leaving, it's you. You can't throw me out of my own home. Watch me. For a moment, I thought she might fight. Her hands clenched into fists, her jaw set in that stubborn line I knew so well. But then she looked at Harper. Beautiful, confident Harper, who'd chosen me over her own sister's betrayal. And something broke in her expression. This isn't over, she said. Yes, it is, Harper replied. It's been over for weeks. You just didn't know it yet. Allison grabbed her laptop charger and stormed out, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows. Harper and I looked at each other across the wreckage of our old lives. Well, she said, that went better than expected. Did it? She didn't call the police or try to stab us with a kitchen knife. I call that a win. Despite everything, I laughed. What happens now? Now? Now we file for divorce, expose their affair to everyone who matters, and show them what real partnership looks like. She kissed me then, soft and sweet and full of promise. This is just the beginning, Nick. By the time we're done with them, they'll wish they'd never met each other. I believed her. More than that, I was looking forward to it. Harper and I spent the rest of the morning planning our campaign. She'd brought copies of all her private investigators' files, and I contributed my own evidence, plus everything I'd learned about Derek's business during my brief investigation. His biggest client is Westfield Industries, Harper said, spreading photographs across my kitchen table. Conservative family company, third-generation owners. They'd drop him immediately if they knew about the affair. What about Allison's firm? Mitchell & Associates, small but prestigious. They handle several religious organizations and family-focused nonprofits. Allison's affair with her married boss would be a PR nightmare. We divided our targets. Harper would handle Derek's business relationships while I focused on Allison's professional and social circles. The beauty of our plan was its simplicity. We weren't going to lie or fabricate evidence. We were just going to make sure the right people knew the truth. First things first, Harper said. We need to make our relationship official. Official? She pulled out her phone and opened Facebook. Derek and Allison think they're so clever, sneaking around behind our backs. Time to show them how public humiliation really works. She changed her relationship status to, "It's complicated," and tagged me in a photo from that morning, both of us in the kitchen, looking happy and intimate. Within minutes, the comments started rolling in. My phone rang almost immediately. Joel. Dude, what the hell is going on? Harper Lane just posted a picture of you two looking very cozy, and my Facebook is exploding. It's a long story. I've got time. I gave him the abbreviated version, while Harper monitored the social media fallout. By noon, half the city knew that something dramatic was happening between the Rourkes and the Lanes. Jesus, Joel said when I finished. So you and Harper are actually together now? Yeah, we are. And you're going to war with your cheating spouses? That's the plan. I'm in. Joel, you don't have to. These people screwed with my best friend. That makes it personal. What do you need? That afternoon, Harper and I visited the best divorce attorney in the city. Margaret Chen had a reputation for being ruthless and thorough. Exactly what we needed. Adultery cases are tricky in no-fault divorce states, she explained, but they can still impact asset division and spousal support, especially when there's been deception about finances. What do you mean? Harper asked. Well, for instance, if Derek used marital assets to pay for his affair, expensive dinners, hotel rooms, gifts, that could be considered dissipation of marital property. Harper's eyes lit up. He's been using our joint credit card for everything. And if Allison received any benefits from the relationship, promotions, bonuses, special treatment, that could impact her claim to spousal support. I thought about Allison's recent raise and the company car Derek had arranged for her. This is going to be interesting. Margaret smiled. I do love a good adultery case. They're so much more satisfying than simple, irreconcilable differences. That evening, Harper and I attended the monthly neighborhood association meeting. We'd never gone before, but tonight seemed like the perfect time to start participating in community activities. We walked in holding hands, and the room went silent. Everyone knew everyone in Riverside Heights, and everyone knew that Harper was married to Derek, and I was married to Allison. "Nick! Harper!" called out Janet Morrison, the association president and the neighborhood's biggest gossip. "How lovely to see you both. Together." "Thanks, Janet," I said. "We thought it was time to get more involved in community activities." "That's wonderful. And how are Allison and Derek?" Harper squeezed my hand. "They're spending a lot of time together lately. Work, you know." The implication hung in the air like smoke. By tomorrow morning, every household in a 5-block radius would know that something scandalous was happening. After the meeting, we drove to Romano's Steakhouse, the same restaurant where Allison and Derek had been photographed. The hostess recognized us immediately. "Mr. and Mrs. Rourke, how nice to see you again. Will Mr. Lane and his wife be joining you tonight?" Harper and I exchanged glances. "Actually," Harper said, "I'm Mrs. Lane, and we'd like table 7 if it's available." The hostess looked confused but seated us at Derek and Allison's regular table. We ordered wine and made sure to be seen by as many people as possible. The restaurant's clientele was exactly the kind of social circle that both Derek and Allison needed for their careers. "This is almost too easy," Harper said, raising her wine glass. "They've been so careless, so arrogant. They never considered that we might fight back." "What's our next move?" "Tomorrow, I'm having lunch with Derek's biggest client. Patricia Westfield and I serve on the hospital charity board together. I think she deserves to know what kind of man she's trusting with her family's investments. And I'm meeting with Allison's assistant. Sarah's always liked me, and she's been uncomfortable with how much time Allison spends behind closed doors with Derek." We clinked glasses, and I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: excitement about the future. The next morning brought the first real casualty of our war. Derek called Harper at 6 a.m., screaming about the Facebook post and demanding to know where she'd spent the night. "I spent it with someone who actually wants to be with me," she told him, putting the call on speaker so I could hear. "You should try it sometime." "This is insane, Harper. You're destroying our marriage over some paranoid fantasy." "I'm not destroying anything, Derek. You already did that when you decided to screw my sister." Silence. Then, "I don't know what you think you know, but Romano's Steakhouse, the Marriott downtown. That little bed and breakfast in wine country where you took her last weekend while I thought you were at a business conference." More silence. "How long have you known?" Derek asked finally. "Long enough to document everything. Long enough to hire the best divorce attorney in the city. Long enough to realize I deserve better than a cheating husband who thinks I'm stupid. Harper, please. We can work this out. We can go to counseling. We can—" "No, Derek, we can't. Because I'm in love with someone else now. Someone who chose me first, not as a consolation prize." She hung up and turned to me with a satisfied smile. One down. My phone rang 20 minutes later. Allison. "Nick, we need to talk." "Do we?" "This thing with Harper has to stop. You're both making a huge mistake." "The only mistake I made was trusting you. I never meant for this to happen. Derek and I, we connected. But it doesn't have to end our marriage. We can work through this." "Like you worked through it by lying to me for months?" "I was trying to protect you." I almost laughed. "Protect me? By making me look like a fool while you paraded around town with your boss?" "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like, Allison? Explain it to me." She couldn't, of course, because there was no explanation that didn't make her look selfish and cruel. "Harper's just using you to get back at Derek," she said finally. "She doesn't really care about you." "You're wrong about that, but even if you weren't, at least she's honest about her motivations. That's more than I can say for you." I hung up and blocked her number. Harper's lunch with Patricia Westfield went exactly as planned. Patricia was horrified to learn that her trusted financial advisor was having an affair with his sister-in-law and immediately called an emergency board meeting to discuss Derek's contract. My meeting with Sarah, Allison's assistant, was equally productive. Sarah had been documenting Derek's frequent visits and late-night meetings with Allison because she was worried about the company's liability. She was more than happy to share her concerns with Allison's other colleagues. By Friday, Derek had lost his biggest client, and Allison was facing a formal HR investigation at her firm. "They're panicking," Harper reported over dinner at my house, our house now, since she'd moved in earlier that week. "Derek called me 6 times today, begging me to reconsider. Allison showed up at my office crying about how we're ruining their lives." "Good," I said. "They ruined ours first. The best part is we haven't done anything illegal or even unethical. We're just making sure the truth gets out." "What's next?" Harper smiled, and I saw that predator's gleam in her eyes again. "Next, we go public. Really public." Saturday morning brought our masterstroke, the Riverside Heights community picnic. Every year, the entire neighborhood gathered in Riverside Park for food, games, and gossip. This year, Harper and I were going to give them something worth talking about. We arrived together, dressed casually but looking like the perfect couple. Harper wore a sundress that made her look like a movie star, and I'd traded my usual jeans for khakis and a polo shirt. We brought homemade potato salad and a cooler full of beer, playing the part of the ideal neighbors. "There they are," Harper murmured, nodding toward the pavilion. Derek and Allison stood near the drinks table, trying to look normal but failing miserably. They'd arrived separately and were maintaining careful distance from each other, but their body language screamed guilt and anxiety. "Showtime," I said. We made our rounds, greeting neighbors and friends with the kind of casual intimacy that suggested our relationship was both new and serious. Harper was brilliant at it, touching my arm when she laughed, leaning against me during conversations, looking at me like I was the most interesting man in the world. "Nick, Harper," Janet Morrison approached with her usual enthusiasm for drama. "You two look so happy together. How long has this been going on?" "Not long," Harper said, smiling up at me. "But sometimes you just know. You know?" "Oh, I do indeed. And how are Derek and Allison handling the situation?" "They're adjusting," I said diplomatically. "Change is hard for everyone." But even as we played the gracious couple, we were executing the final phase of our plan. Harper had invited several of Derek's clients to the picnic, while I'd made sure that key people from Allison's professional circle would be there. All we had to do was let the truth speak for itself. The crisis came at 2 p.m. during the annual softball game. Derek, either drunk or desperate, decided to confront me publicly. "This is all your fault," he shouted, stumbling across the field toward me. "You turned my wife against me." The game stopped. Conversations died. Everyone turned to watch the drama unfold. "Derek," I said calmly, "maybe you should sit down." "Don't tell me what to do. You stole my wife." Harper appeared at my side, her face flushed with anger. "I'm not property, Derek. You can't steal what was never really yours. You're my wife. I was your wife. Past tense. You gave that up when you decided my sister was more interesting than our marriage." A collective gasp went up from the crowd. Derek's face went white as he realized what Harper had just announced to the entire neighborhood. "That's not... I never..." "Romano's Steakhouse," Harper said, loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Every Tuesday and Friday for 3 months. The Marriott downtown. That weekend in wine country while I thought you were at a conference." Derek looked around at the circle of faces, all staring at him with varying degrees of shock and disgust. Several of his clients were in the crowd, including Patricia Westfield, who looked like she'd swallowed something sour. "You're lying," he said desperately. Harper pulled out her phone and showed the screen to the nearest group of people. Private investigators' photos, dates, times, locations. Should I pass it around? "That's enough," Allison finally spoke up, pushing through the crowd toward us. "This is insane. You're both insane." "Are we?" I asked. "We're not the ones who spent months sneaking around behind our spouses' backs." "It wasn't supposed to happen like this," Allison said, tears streaming down her face. "We fell in love. People can't help who they fall in love with." "You're right," Harper said. "They can't. That's why I fell in love with Nick." She kissed me then, in front of everyone, and the crowd erupted in whispers and gasps. When we broke apart, I saw something beautiful and fierce in her eyes. "The difference," Harper continued, "is that we were honest about it. We didn't lie and cheat and make fools of the people who loved us." Derek made one last desperate play. "She's using you, Nick. This is all about getting back at me." "Maybe it started that way," I admitted. "But it became something real, something neither of you could understand, because you've never put anyone else's needs before your own." The crowd was completely silent now, hanging on every word. "You want to know the truth?" I continued. "Harper and I are getting married next month, and we're inviting everyone here to celebrate with us." The announcement hit Derek and Allison like a physical blow. They looked at each other, then at us, then at the crowd of neighbors and colleagues who were witnessing their complete humiliation. "This isn't over," Derek said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Yes, it is," Harper replied. "It's been over since the moment you decided my sister was worth more than your marriage. The only difference is that now everyone knows it." Derek and Allison left separately, both looking broken and defeated. The crowd gradually dispersed, buzzing with excitement about the drama they'd witnessed. "Well," Harper said, taking my hand, "that went better than expected." "Did it?" "They're finished, Nick. Derek will lose most of his clients after this, and Allison's firm will probably let her go rather than deal with the scandal. We won." She was right. Over the next week, the fallout was everything we'd hoped for. Derek's business collapsed as client after client pulled their accounts. Allison was quietly terminated from her marketing firm. Both of them became social pariahs in our tight-knit community. Meanwhile, Harper and I became the couple everyone wanted to be around. We were proof that sometimes the good guys do win, that love can triumph over betrayal, that people who hurt you don't always get away with it. A month later, we stood in the same park where we'd exposed Derek and Allison, exchanging vows in front of 200 guests. My former wife and her lover weren't invited, but we heard they'd both left town by then, presumably to start over somewhere else. As I kissed my new bride under the summer sun, I thought about how strange life could be. A year ago, I'd been a fool, married to a woman who didn't love me. Now I was a man who'd fought for what he deserved and won. Harper pulled back from our kiss and smiled at me with those fierce green eyes. "No regrets?" she whispered. "Only that we didn't do this sooner," I replied. The crowd cheered, and we walked back down the aisle hand in hand, ready to begin our real life together. Behind us, the sun was setting on one story and rising on another. Some date nights you never forget. This one started at 11 p.m. on a desperate evening and ended with the whole world watching us claim our happiness.